Welcome into the On3 studios here in Nashville, Tennessee. Today is Wednesday, May 8th, and we've almost made it through another week. Glad to be back talking recruiting with you all. We got a great show today. It's a little noisy. I got a soundboard, and all right, so here's the deal. I think long-term, soundboard, net good for the show. Short-term, soundboard, maybe a little annoying. I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm always trying to make this show better, different, more entertaining. So give me a little time to work with this thing. It's only May. It's the off season. By the time the season comes around, I promise I'll have this thing dialed in and it will not be annoying. Went a little crazy with it today, though, so bear with me. I'll get better. All right, let's talk about recruiting. Big show today. Jaime Ffrench, he made some big news. The five-star wide receiver has a shocking new leader. We break it down. We talk transfer portal winners with the portal expert, Pete Nakos. We also talk Auburn flip targets because last cycle, the Tigers went flip crazy. Are they about to repeat in 2025? Jeffrey Lee from Auburn Live comes on to break it all down. We have a lot of updates on today's Inside Scoop, so let's get to it. We are talking Texas recruiting in this video, the biggest news in the Longhorn market. We're going to cover it all in this video. Five-star Michael Fusi is moving toward a final decision. Duncanville quarterback Kelen Russell, he got a visit today from the Texas staff. Big news. Big flip target there. Then we got running back James Simon and also Jaime Ffrench drops the top three where Texas leads. Whew. We're going to break it all down. We got Justin Wells. He's going to ride shotgun. Get it? Riding shotgun on this video. Let's get to it. But first, you got to hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We're almost to 50K, and we talk Longhorn recruiting all off season. All right, let's bring in Justin Wills from inside Texas. How about that, Justin? You don't get that applause very much when you come on, do you? A lot of boos normally, huh? But anyway.
Yes, I'm used to the boos.
We got to start with five-star offensive tackle Michael Fusi because this recruitment, it feels like it's coming down to the home stretch, but Texas fans know. I mean, this is like 2.5 years in the making. So as it stands now, Texas currently trending at 86% on the RPM. Do we feel good about Texas as he starts to narrow this thing down?
Absolutely. I think at this stage, understand with Fusi, he really does enjoy the process, Josh. He enjoys going and taking these trips. It doesn't go to his head. He's grateful for it. Some kids get burned out. Fusi doesn't. He really does enjoy it. And so that's why you see him at different places like Central Florida last weekend. He'll go anywhere if you're going to host him. But I do think it's going to come down pretty quickly once those June official visits kick off. And Texas gets that last one on June 21st to the 23rd. And right now, I feel like it's a Texas-Oklahoma, Texas A&M battle. I think it's Texas and Texas A&M kind of jockeying for that first position right now. I think Oklahoma's lagging a little bit in that department. Missouri's still going to make a push. LSU's still going to make a push. Oregon's going to be in the mix. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to come around to those three with Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. And it might come down just an old-style Lone Star shootout between the Horns and the Aggies.
Yeah, I think in the end, it probably will. Let's move on because now, finally, we can say it. Running back James Simon is trending to Texas. Justin, we've been waiting a long time for this one. Even though LSU had the percentage on the recruiting prediction machine, you and I have been talking for the last couple of weeks that James Simon really should be trending toward Texas. Now he officially is on the recruiting prediction machine. Why do you like Texas for the number 9 running back in America?
I think Texas makes the most sense right now. I actually was at Calvary Baptist earlier today, and I got to hang out with James and with his father and with his coach and some of his teammates. And I think Texas and James Simon just make a lot of sense. Listen, Texas looks good. Texas A&M's in the mix. LSU's obviously hanging around the rim. Notre Dame is a school that he's liked, his parents like. Alabama's still in the mix, but he's got one official visit, Josh, and that's to Austin on June 21st to the 23rd. He did tell me today he could potentially schedule a few other official visits, but I don't think those are actually going to happen. I think we're going to have a decision sooner rather than later. I know they want to kind of narrow some stuff down and potentially look at maybe something in the summer. But between you and me, I don't think it's going to go that far. I think Tashard Choice has got a pretty big lead in this race right now. They prioritized him at the right time. And James Simon in Texas, again, just make too much sense.
All right, yeah, I agree. I think James Simon could be the next commitment for the Texas Longhorns. See how that goes. All right, this is big news. Jaime Ffrench, he's had another twist in his recruitment. If we can just rewind it here for a second. Remember, Jaime Ffrench, the 5-star wide receiver out of Jacksonville, committed to Alabama a while ago, decommitted in the wake of the Nick Saban retirement. Then it was FSU that was the perceived leader coming out of that decommitment. Then it was Ohio State was the leader. But now he tells Chad Simmons that there's 3 teams standing out to him right now in this order: Texas, LSU, and Miami. Absolutely huge. Texas, LSU, and Miami in that order. He has no picks on the recruiting prediction machine. Justin, are you ready to put that pick in for the Horns?
I'm getting closer. Josh. It's getting to that time. When he hit Austin, 3 weeks ago, almost a month ago, hung out with some of the receiver big targets, DeCorian Moore, Kalik Lockett, kind of got to spend a few days there. I think he left Austin with a really good sense of this could be the spot. Yeah. And like you said, it's been kind of a roller coaster. Jaime is a delightful kid and really a fun kid to follow and talk to and learn about. But, the one consistency with his inconsistencies is Texas. We had heard Alabama obviously decommits. Then Ohio State was a lean. They look like they're not in it anymore. And so the one consistent with all these schools, in my opinion, has been Texas. And I know the Horns view him as a major priority. If DeCorian Moore is 1A, Jaime Ffrench is 1B, and maybe 1A half. They are both the 2 top guys on the big board. And so I'm getting closer, Josh. A lot of things are coming into that. Chad Simmons had some great reporting on that one. We had got to talk to him a couple weeks ago, and Texas was that consistent team he kept mentioning. Tennessee was in the mix. We had heard LSU a little bit. But the one school we kept hearing the most was Texas. And I think, they've got Sark and those guys have one more year to sell Arch Manning. Hey, you want to catch passes from this future first-round pick. You want to be one of those guys. And I think that resonates along with the offense and the fact that they just had 11 guys selected in the NFL draft and the top 4 pass catchers from last year's offense drafted. Jaime Ffrench in Texas is starting to look really, really nice.
There you have it, Texas fans. Now, speaking of looking really nice, quarterback Kelen Russell, SMU commit from Duncanville, Texas. What's the latest with Kelen Russell? Was there a major development that went down today?
Yes. So Texas quarterback coach A.J. Milwee is set to be at Duncanville as we're recording this, I believe. He told Kelen before and during one of his visits he wanted to come watch him throw in person. And that's exactly what Milwee's going to do. Now, I'm unsure if Sark or Jeff Banks or any of the other guys are going to be there. They may wait for the spring game that Duncanville holds for all of them to come, or more of them, rather. But Milwee has been consistent with Kelen. He wants to watch him throw. That development is real, and we're seeing other schools jump into the mix. We saw Florida getting after it. We know that Ole Miss really likes him. And so SMU's just going to have to hang on. This kid has way too much talent and way too much upside. And look, SMU does a great job, Josh, at keeping a lot of those DFW kids in-house, especially now that they're in the ACC. But Texas is still Texas, and Kelen Russell is still paying attention, and a chunk of his teammates are playing in rotation in minutes in Austin. There's a mini pipeline being built there right now from Duncanville to Austin. And so,
how does the Texas staff balance this with the commitment of KJ Lacey?
I think you have to be upfront and honest with him. And I know they have with Lacey. It's one of those things where you have to look at the bigger picture. When Quinn Ewers gets drafted probably in the first round next year, they're only going to have 2 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster.
Right.
And a Steve Sarkisian quarterback room is not going to have less than 2 scholarships quarterbacks in that room. Not going to happen. And so you got to prepare. You got to have contingencies. Kelen Russell's a guy that if he was higher rated maybe earlier, or they were able to evaluate him earlier, he may already have a Texas offer. He may already be in this class. But they identified KJ Lacey early. They love the Saraland 4-star for good reason. Beautiful passer. But at the end of the day, you have to stock the roster. And quarterback for Sark is always going to be the utmost importance. It's always going to take precedent over all of them. And, I don't think Lacey's a big fan of a 2-quarterback class. But in this day and age, that's how it is. Like Sark is going to grab who he wants.
Yeah, and I know KJ Lacey's seeing this whole Kelen Russell recruitment play out in front of him. I know Texas would sign both of them. That's fair to say. But do you think that KJ Lacey ultimately would sign with a second quarterback, or do you get the vibe? Because I kind of get the vibe that KJ Lacey's going to bounce if they do land Kelen Russell. Maybe I'm wrong.
I get that vibe too. And here's the thing with Lacey. I think he's been honest, as much as Sark and those guys have been upfront with him. I think Lacey and his family have been the same.
Yeah.
They've taken a lot of visits, especially to local places. Auburn is the school to really watch. They are making him a priority. And if Kelen Russell gets that offer, I think it'll be only a matter of time before he jumps into the Texas class. And then we're going to have to start watching KJ Lacey to kind of see how that turns out. You never know.
Yeah.
That's how these things turn. We have to let it play out during the season sometimes. But if Texas offers Kelen Russell, I think that would kind of lock that one in. And that's what Texas is doing. They're being heavy on the evaluation. A.J. Milwauee's going to watch him throw. If Milwauee likes it, checks a lot of boxes, Sark's going to watch him throw. Though they have a process with these quarterback offers. That's why they're so judicious when handing them out. And so at the end of the day, I'd be hesitant to feel like Lacey would stay in a 2-quarterback class. Whereas with Kelen Russell, I don't think he minds a 2-quarterback class at all.
Yeah, the QB dominoes. Now they could start spinning again. I'm going to have to break out the whiteboard here soon if that happens. But hey, we'll keep an eye on this whole Kelen Russell development. And Justin Wells from Inside Texas. Great job today here on the Inside Scoop. We appreciate you.
Hey, appreciate you, Josh.
We're talking spring portal winners. It's been a wild month of transfers since the second portal window opened in early April. We're going to break it all down. I got the portal monster himself, Pete Nakos, in this video. We're going to talk about who won the second round of the transfer portal. But before we get into it, look at this. Can we do it? Can we hit 50K? I think we can. You guys got to help out. Hit subscribe. All right. Now let's bring in Pete Nakos. Pete, we spoke before the video, and there's 4 or 5, actually there's 6 teams here that you really like their transfer portal hauls. Now, I'm not going to have you list the favorite. I'm going to let the fans at the end vote on who won the spring transfer portal window. We're just going to talk at random. So let's start right here at the top. We'll talk Miami. Now, Cam Ward in the first round. Then you had Damian Martinez kind of headlining the second round. But if you dig a little deeper here, Miami really cleaned up in the portal.
Yeah, you look at their haul, they get Damian Martinez, Sam Brown, Simeon Barrow, Jalen Alderman, and Deontay Hale. The biggest winner, like you just mentioned right away, Josh, is Damian Martinez. The AP Pac-12 first team selection gives the Canes their number one running back. It was a position of need. But then you look elsewhere. I mean, they fill a need at defensive tackle with Simeon Barrow. They bring in Sam Brown, who's a strong compliment.
He didn't come cheap now, did he, Pete?
No. But he was not the priciest defensive tackle, and we're going to get to that later. And I really like the pickup of Sam Brown, the Houston wide receiver as well, who adds a compliment to Xavier Restrepo, who seems to – he'll be Cam Ward's number one target probably this fall.
All right, so Miami makes their case for portal class of the spring. Now let's talk Oregon. Not a ton of quantity here, but boy, is it quality.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon just brings in Derek Harmon and Peyton Woodyard, but two arguably the more impact guys we saw this spring portal cycle. I don't have an exact number for you, Josh, but there's probably somewhere between 10 and 20, you could argue, impact players, and I'd say those are two of them.
All right. Now let's talk Colorado, kind of the opposite of Oregon. They had a ton of turnover, which means they had to bring in a lot of guys. So how do you think Colorado stacks up when it comes to spring portal window?
Yeah, I was looking at the class earlier today. They bring in 2 really proven running backs, Dallin Hayden and Rashad Amos.
Big impact guys.
Big impact guys. And then on the defensive line, they bring in Ryan Buell, the Ohio defensive tackle. They also brought in the edge from Pitt, Dayon Hayes. I really like those pickups. They bring in some young guys. We'll have to see how it pans out. But Zachariah Owens from Clemson, Peyton Kirkland from Texas. Those are not 100% sure how it'll all work out with those guys, but they're both young guys and maybe a starting point for Deion Sanders to build an offensive line for the future.
All right, a lot of discussion about this portal class. Pete, in your opinion, did they bring in more talent than they lost?
I would say that across the board, they brought in more talent. I'm not saying that.
There you go, Colorado fans. There you go. We're not all haters.
I'm not. Yeah, no haters here. I'm not saying that they're going to win the Big 12 title or anything, but I think that they brought in the right pieces for an upgrade, and you can make the argument that the one big loss for the Buffs this go around was really just Dylan Edwards, who lands at Kansas State.
All right. Now, Auburn. Let's move on to the Auburn Tigers. They needed a lot in the portal, and they've been bringing in a lot. Why do you think Auburn is one of the teams under consideration for winning the spring portal window?
Auburn has completely retooled their wide receiver room, right? They bring in the Penn State receiver Keandre Lambert-Smith, arguably the best wide receiver that we saw in the portal this go around. They brought in Cam Coleman this winter. I think that they made the right moves there. And then they completely retooled the defensive line. They bring in the edge Kieron Crawford from Arkansas State, and then the defensive tackle is Philip Bliddy from Indiana, and then Isaiah Rakes from USC. And all three of those guys should be able to contribute right away and really like what Auburn's done there so far this spring.
All right, now Oklahoma makes your list. They kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but why do you like the Sooners class?
I really like Oklahoma because they really address the positions of need at a really like high value, right? They bring in the TCU defensive tackle Dominic Williams, who is but we had him ranked as the top defensive tackle available in the portal, and the Big 12 defensive player of the year, and then also a freshman All-American. So really like that pickup. They also add the SMU offensive lineman Branson Hickman, who has playing experience and can play right away. And then to go with Dominic Williams, they also bring in the Louisville defensive lineman Jermaine Lowell, I believe that's how you say his name. And he's a guy who maybe isn't as flashy as Dominic Williams, but has a lot of snaps under his belt.
All right, that's big for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, UCF makes your list. Is this just kind of – are you trying to make right with UCF fans after a little debacle that happened a couple weeks ago? Or why is UCF on this list?
No, I really like UCF because I think that they got a few pieces that can contribute right away.
You got to give them a bomb for that.
Well, you got to give them a bomb. Some pieces who can contribute right away, but also – they probably bring in their quarterback of the future in the Miami quarterback, Ja'Cory Brown. I think that's a smart pickup. Gives KJ Jefferson a good backup this season, and then he has multiple years of eligibility remaining. I also really like the pickup of Penny Boone from Louisville. He's a running back who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year at Toledo, and then he's a really strong pairing with RJ Harvey. And then the last highlight you could say from that class is Nigel Lee Kelly, the edge from Miami, who has a lot of upside, it appears.
Yeah, he was a big-time prospect out of high school. That deserves a lot of things, yeah. All right, so from your perspective, are things starting to slow down a little bit in the portal?
Things are starting to slow down. There's a few right at top about the top 10 available in the portal today. There's still some big names out there. I think the biggest impact guy still left on the board is former Tennessee and Louisville edge Tyler Barron. That has kind of come down to USC, Ole Miss, and Miami, but nothing really surprises me about Tyler Barron. And then I don't know what the impact's going to be, Josh, but I know everyone really wants to know where Cormani McClain
That's
was.
what we want to know. I was going to say, this isn't the on-3 recruit. This isn't the inside scoop if we're not talking Cormani McClain. So tell me, what's going on with Cormani McClain?
I talked to some people this weekend, and it's really clear at this point that Cormani McClain does not want a high-profile recruitment, which is very unlike his high school recruitment was. Yeah. Since when? That's a great question. It's just that I talked to some people who are really helping him run this, and they just are trying to keep it on the DL.
Okay, that's fair enough. We can keep it on the DL a little bit, but anyway, all right. Back to what we all came here for. We want to know who won the spring portal. You guys in the comment section below, let me know, who do you think is the big winner for the spring portal? We got Auburn, we got Oklahoma, UCF, Colorado, Oregon, Miami. Let me know. Comment section below.
Take away the soundboard.
Auburn's recruiting under Hugh Freeze has been aggressive, to say the least. Last year's top commitments: Cam Coleman, Amaris Williams, DeMarcus Riddick, Jamonte Waller, Perry Thompson. What did they all have in common? They were all flips. That's what Hugh Freeze does. And in this video, I got Auburn insider Jeffrey Lee here. We're going to talk more Auburn flips. But first, let's get this page to 50K. Come on, they gave me a soundboard. I know we can get the page to 50K. Hit subscribe for me, please. All right, let's bring on the great Jeffrey Lee from Auburn Live. We're talking Auburn flips. And if we're going to talk flip talk with Auburn, how can we not start at the top with quarterback Juju Lewis? Now, he's been committed to USC. I think one of the major developments in this recruitment, to be honest with you, has been Georgia taking Ryan Montgomery and essentially taking the dogs out of this recruitment. Right now, I'd say all eyes are on Auburn when it comes to flipping a potential flip of Juju Lewis from USC. How are you seeing this one play out right now?
Completely agree, Josh. I really do. Things have been kind of slow, kind of quiet with Juju the last couple of weeks, and that's probably a good thing for Auburn because, leading up into the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of buzz about Auburn with Julian Lewis, and it remains that way to this day. He's set to come in for an official visit in June, and I would think, a decision one way or the other would come soon after. And I completely agree with you about Georgia being out of the picture, leaving Auburn, USC, maybe Colorado, maybe Alabama, but it certainly feels like, at least right now, that he either sticks with USC or flips to Auburn.
All right, so spring visit time is kind of over. We're prepping for summer visit. We're in that transitional time of May. Do you think that we see Juju Lewis on campus again before his scheduled official visit, or will that be the next time you expect him at the Plains?
I expect him for an OV, but I wouldn't be surprised. These guys bring in unofficial visits. They'll just show up. Julian is about, an hour and a half from Auburn, so it's not that long of a drive. He could easily pop down here, and you probably wouldn't know it if he did.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. You got to expect Juju Lewis at some point is going to want to put this recruitment to bed and have a final decision, whether that's sticking with USC and helping build the Trojans recruiting class or flipping to another program. So do you think that could come after official visits happen?
Absolutely. Both of those coaching staffs, whether it be USC or the field, want this kid in their class helping recruit because he could be a huge domino for whomever's class he sticks in or flips to.
Obviously, committed to the USC Trojans, but how would you kind of rank the competition with Auburn, with Colorado, you got a couple programs in there that are really trying to dig their hooks into this recruitment. Where do you put Auburn?
I put Auburn squarely at number 2, confidently at number 2. Boom. I don't have a soundboard, but I appreciate the effect. I do. And from talking to several people on Julian's side of things, talking to people on Auburn's side of things, I'm hearing the same thing from both sides, which leads me to believe that, Auburn's number 2, and I say that confidently. Sure, Colorado's still in there, Alabama still hanging around, obviously USC with Lincoln Riley, but I would have Auburn number 2, and I think everybody else below that. I don't know that there's a 3 or a 4. But I do think USC, Auburn 1 and 2 right now, and not a lot of difference.
All right, now let's move down the list here to running back Alvin Henderson. He snuck out of Elba, Alabama, and committed to Penn State all the way up in the Northeast. Now, Bama and Auburn were both players in this recruitment. Alvin Henderson obviously chose the Nittany Lions, but do you think this one is over?
Not at all. Not at all. And, leading up to that announcement, we all heard, behind the scenes that he was leaning Penn State. And I felt confident that he was going to commit to Penn State, but I kept my RPM, my prediction on Auburn, because in the end, I think he does end up at Auburn. He's wanted to be at Auburn for so long. Boom. And, Derek Nix and these guys have come in and made him, continued to have him as a top priority. The thing about Alvin, if you go back and listen to his pre-commitment interview, I think it was with Chaz Simmons, he said something, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Auburn this year. Right. And I think what Alvin's saying by that is, and I've talked to some people behind the scenes about this, he's saying, when you talk about Hugh Freeze's history and his offense, everybody can name me quarterbacks. Everybody can name me wide receivers that have flourished in his system. How many running backs can you name? And I was like, man, that's a good question. Because I can't name any. So I think his concern with Auburn and Hugh Freeze is the running backs and how he would be utilized. And I think that's what he was saying pre-commitment is I'm going to be keeping an eye on Auburn. Now, I think what he's saying is I'm going to watch Auburn, how they use Jarquez Hunter, how they use Damari Alston, Jeremiah Cobb, Brian Battie, and then I'll make my final decision.
So you think this is a long-term flip opportunity?
Sure, I do.
All right. Now let's move down to the next one. This one, just follow me here. Defensive lineman Antonio Coleman. Could there be another flip in the works? Guys, if you haven't been following this recruitment, it's one of the craziest so far this cycle. Ready? He committed to Alabama in September of 2023. Flips to Auburn in December of 23. Flips back to Alabama on March 2nd, 2024. And now we're going to put him on Flip Watch. Well, I don't want to say Flip Watch, but we're going to include him in this Flip Talk segment. Is it really possible for Antonio Coleman to flip again to Auburn?
It really is, believe it or not. He is, he has come back since his visit since his recommitment to Alabama. He's been back at Auburn. He's given Auburn all the right vibes to at least give them hope, optimism that there is potential there for yet another flip. I think we'll see him back in Auburn several times as an OV. I think we'll see him several times during the season on unofficial visits. The big thing there was Jeremy Garrett, the former defensive line coach at Auburn, leaving after the season and going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, Vontrell King Williams took over, who was Jeremy Garrett's assistant, but Vontrell King Williams had been recruiting these kids just as much as Jeremy Garrett has. So that relationship was there. And I believe that relationship there, as well as the need for Auburn for that defensive line, is going to be big. It's going to keep Auburn in this. And if I were coming out with a commit watch list for long term, I think Antonio Coleman would be fairly high. I think top half of my list.
All right. Well, hey, at least if he does flip back to Auburn, then Hayes Fawcett won't have to draw up another graphic. He already has one. All right. One more that could possibly flip from USC is edge Isaiah Gibson. Really interesting prospect, the number 2 edge in the country from Warner Robins High School. And he committed to USC on March 24th, and it shocked pretty much every team in the South. Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, they were all recruiting him heavily, and then he pulls the trigger to USC. Do you think that this one's going to stick?
I do not. And, USC had that run of commitments there right at the early spring. They had a run of commitments. A lot of guys from the Southeast committing to USC, and including Juju Lewis being there from the Southeast. But I think he's going to be one to watch. Now, I would put him on my commit flip watch list. But, Auburn's dealing with a lot of other guys here. You're dealing with Georgia. You're dealing with Oklahoma. You're dealing with some stud here, some elite programs here that are recruiting at a high level. And not to take anything away from Auburn, because they too are recruiting at a high level, and they're going to get Isaiah Gibson back on campus in June, I believe, for an official visit. So they're a player for sure, and I would have him on my flip watch list, probably bottom half, but certainly on there.
All right, we will continue to track that one. Now, Malik Autry, this is an interesting one. Over the weekend, the Auburn commitment, defensive line Auburn commitment, took a visit over the weekend to Ohio State. Do you feel like there's a good chance he could flip?
A good chance? No. A chance? Yes. There you go. Throw it up.
I had to use the buzzer once.
But definitely a chance, Josh. But I tell you, the one school I would be more concerned with if I'm an Auburn fan is, he's visiting Ohio State, but Florida has been on this kid since he committed, never relented, and he's been down there several times. It feels like if he's not at Auburn, he's down in Gainesville. So I'm keeping a close eye on Florida with him. Now, of course, he's like a lot of these kids. When he's talking to the Auburn reporters, he's saying all the right things. He's saying all the right things, and he's getting on Twitter and he's tweeting all the and he's posting all the right things. But there's got to be at least a slight level of concern if you're Auburn when this kid keeps going back down to Gainesville. Visiting other schools is probably going to happen, but I think Florida is your main competition there when it comes to Malik Autry.
So just in general, I named all those guys at the top of this video that had flipped last cycle. Do you think that Hugh Freeze and the staff are going to be as aggressive with the flips in 2025?
I don't know that they'll have to be. I think in 2024, they were working behind. They were a new staff. They came in December, didn't really get finalized there till late in that 2023 class. So they were playing catch up to a lot of these kids who were making commitments in the spring and the early summer. And Auburn had been there. This staff had been there for 4 or 5 months. So they were having to go back and flip these kids and get back in these recruitments. This cycle and next year will be completely out, but they're still, a little bit behind. You know how recruiting gets. If you're not recruiting 2 years in advance, you're not doing it right. So I don't think they will be doing as much flipping. I don't think they're going to be. They'll have to do as much flipping as they did last year. But certainly, will some of these early guys, like the guys we mentioned, Derek Smith is another guy who's committed to Alabama that Auburn continues to recruit. Naeem Offord from Birmingham, the 5-star cornerback's committed to Ohio State. Auburn's continuing to recruit.
That'd be a big one.
Yeah. So not as heavily, not as much because they're not forced to, but certainly going to be working that flip watch list for sure.
All right. Well, Jeffrey Lee from Auburn Live, thank you for dropping by with all this flip intel. And you guys in the comments section below, how we feeling about these big flips? Who's Auburn going to get? Auburn fans, tap in. Let me know. Comment section below. We're talking Tennessee recruiting. Priority targets on the Tennessee recruiting board. Coaches are on the road all week making key visits. So I got Matt Ray here with me. We're going to break it all down. But first, Tennessee fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We talk vol recruiting all offseason long. Need you to jump on and hit subscribe for me, please. All right, let's bring on Matt Ray from VolQuest. Hey. All right. We're going to talk O-line board. It is deep. It is talented. We've been talking about it on this channel all offseason. Now, I know they're going to see Dontrell Glover this week. He's a former Florida State commit that they are making a priority. But we got to talk about a couple of recent developments at the very top of the board. We're talking Josh Petty, David Sanders. So the news comes out that Steve Wiltfong dropped a Fong bomb for Josh Petty to Florida State. Now, Petty's from Georgia. He's made a lot of visits to Tennessee. Do you feel that the Vols are out of it, or is this just an early prediction from Steve?
No, Josh, I don't feel like the Vols are out of it. I still would expect Josh Petty to make it back to campus here at the 1st of June, and that's going to be a big visit. And it was always going to be a big visit for Tennessee. It's been a little while since Josh Petty visited Knoxville. Yeah. So, again, to get him back in the middle of that official visit schedule, he shuffled some things around to get back there. So I think it's a priority to Josh Petty to get back to Tennessee before he makes a decision. Joey Halsley and Glenn Ellerby were in on Tuesday morning to check in on him at Fellowship Christian there in Roswell. And I think Tennessee's just going to continue to push there. But I think Florida State has been a long-time contender in this, so it's pretty easy to see, some of the things that they have working in their favor, that kind of goes into Steve's prediction as well.
All right. Now let's talk about David Sanders, because the big news this week was that he popped up kind of surprisingly at Ohio State for his second unofficial visit of the offseason. Last month, though, we were talking about Tennessee because they got David Sanders on back-to-back visits, and it was all about Tennessee. But now it's all Ohio State. If you're talking to Tennessee fans right now about how they should feel about David Sanders, what would you tell them?
Continue to feel like coming out of the spring that Tennessee's put their best foot forward and, position themselves as well as they could for David Sanders. And I think talking back and forth between Austin and myself, we continue to feel that way. I think Tennessee has shown David Sanders and his family a lot of things. And those 2 visits right there in about a 6-day span between a spring practice on Saturday and an orange and white game were important visits for David Sanders. There's some belief that he could make it back to town, at the end of May. We'll see if that happens when Tennessee hosts its 865 live event.
Right.
But overall, those June official visits, I think for me, were always going to be the deciding factor for David Sanders. And Tennessee set to host him on June 14th on a priority weekend for the Vols. And I think that's going to be the visit, that kind of shapes everything for Tennessee as they push toward the finish line.
Yeah, I think, like you said, if you're looking at this up close, it might feel like Ohio State is taking the momentum away from Tennessee. But like you said, if you take a step back and kind of realize that, hey, these official visits are still going to matter a lot, don't get caught up in what kind of happens in these middle months, then yes, the focus is still on Tennessee. They are still in a good spot. Just had to get it cleared up for Tennessee fans. You know how recruiting goes. All right. Now,
absolutely.
The Volunteers are doing a great job when it comes to locking down in-state wide receiver talent. but they want to go national and land at least one of these national big-time names, and I'm talking Caleb Cunningham, Jaime Ffrench, Derek Meadows, Travis Smith. So out of the guys I just mentioned, who do you think Tennessee could add from that group?
I think it's pretty interesting. I think, Tennessee's going to check on Jaime Ffrench later this week. They're checking on Caleb Cunningham right about now, about the time of this recording. They saw Travis Smith on Monday. They saw Derek Meadows last week. Derek Meadows is kind of the guy that I think is interesting. Out of this group, he hasn't been to Tennessee as much as the others have, but he'll be back, to kind of kick off June on his official visit tour. He'll get into town May 31st and start taking his official visit with Tennessee and then take the rest of his official visits. But to me right now, Josh, I think Travis Smith is the guy that Tennessee's continued to show the most for. I think overall he's had a long-standing relationship with Kelsey Pope, Josh Heupel. He was here in the spring. He'll be back in June. I think Travis Smith really saw a lot from the Tennessee offense during that spring visit. Dante Thornton made some explosive plays during the practice setting. Tennessee was able to really kind of show him how he fit in. Now, this is, Georgia's not going to lay down. Alabama's not going to lay down. It's a heavyweight battle for Travis Smith, and there's definitely some things that, I think are pulling him toward Athens as well. I think if you talk to people on that side, I think Georgia feels pretty good about their chances. So, it's going to be, at the end of the day, very interesting to see where things go with Travis Smith. But Tennessee's been at or near the top of this recruitment really since the fall. So I think I would still kind of lean towards Travis Smith out of that grouping.
All right, yeah, all those names that I listed, none of them are going to come easy, but they're all potential targets there for Tennessee that are on the board. All right, before I let you go, any other key visits taking place this week? I know over on VolQuest, I was checking it out, and you guys are listing dozens and dozens of stops by the Tennessee staff, but who is some of the most important names we haven't hit on?
Yeah, so I think Tennessee will see David Sanders later in the week. They'll make their rounds in North Carolina. Huge. Like I said, they'll see Jaime Ffrench. Obviously, when you see David Sanders, you see Leo Delaney. Joey Halsley will see top 2026 quarterback Faison Brandon. And Alec Ablin will check on five-star athlete. Tennessee's recruiting him as a tight end, Kendra Harrison. So there's still some big visits to be had throughout the week for the Tennessee coaching staff.
Yeah, lots of big visits taking place all week. Like I said, go check out VolQuest. They got all the details on recruiting, on football, whatever you need, it's there. Matt Ray, thank you for joining the Inside Scoop. Oh, let me get you. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. Stay there. There we go. Hey, Matt Ray.
There we go.
Well, you've made it to the end of today's video, but there's hundreds more videos on the On3 Recruits channel for you to check out. And also, while you're here, hit subscribe.